Hey everyone, it's great to have you here. Today, we're diving into an incredible story about resilience, betrayal, and ultimately finding true love. This is the tale of Mark Johnson, a man who endured the heartbreak of 3 marriages to cheating wives, only to discover genuine happiness in the end. Stick around as we explore Mark's journey through pain and perseverance, and how he finally found his place in the world. Let's get started. Mark Johnson had always believed that finding the right woman to marry would complete his life. As he leaned back in his chair, glancing out the window of his Austin, Texas office, he couldn't help but wonder why his luck with love had been so rotten. He was on the verge of starting a 2-week vacation, a break he desperately needed to clear his mind. "Mark, are you ready for the big day?" came the familiar voice of his assistant, Hannah, snapping him out of his reverie. Hannah had been working with him for nearly a decade. She was more than just an assistant, she was a trusted confidant, someone who knew his strengths and weaknesses better than most. "As ready as I'll ever be, Hannah," Mark replied, attempting to muster up some enthusiasm. "Remember to keep it simple this time, okay boss? No breaking records for the number of marriages in 10 years, she teased, a playful glint in her eye. Mark chuckled. "Are you holding on to me, Hannah? Maybe just a little, but you're a good guy, Mark. You'll get through all this crap," she said, her voice softening with genuine concern. "Yeah, well, call it what it is, Hannah. It was a ton of crap," he admitted, the weight of his failed relationships heavy on his mind. "Do you need anything else before you head out? Any last-minute reminders?" Hannah asked, always thorough and attentive. "No, I think we've covered everything. Thanks for holding down the fort while I'm gone. I'll just head to the pub tonight to unwind before diving into wedding preparations for the rest of the week." "I'm glad we're keeping this wedding low-key," Mark said, grateful for the simplicity this time around. As he gathered his things, Mark couldn't help but reflect on how much Hannah meant to him. She wasn't just an employee, she had become a close friend, someone special since the day he hired her at Johnson Wealth Management nearly 10 years ago. He remembered interviewing her, her resume making her a top contender. But when she walked into his office, she appeared somewhat shy and reserved, her thin frame and tired eyes hinting at a tough day. Despite her cold, she nailed the interview, and Mark knew he had found someone exceptional. Over the years, she had proven to be dynamic, confident, and beautiful in ways that surpassed mere physical appearance. Leaving the office, Mark decided to relax for a few hours at his favorite pub near his home in Austin. The place was a haven for him, a spot where he could let his guard down and find solace in familiar faces. The pub, with its warm, welcoming atmosphere and the comforting smell of food, always felt like a second home. As Mark sauntered up to the bar, Maggie, the bartender, greeted him with a smile. Maggie, with her striking red hair and stern yet caring demeanor, had been a constant in Mark's life for years. She was like a second mother, confidant, and caring friend all rolled into one. Despite the toll that hard living and smoking had taken on her features, Maggie's inner beauty and wisdom always shone through. "Mr. 3 Reasons in the Wind, how's my favorite client doing tonight?" Maggie asked, her voice a mix of amusement and genuine concern. "Better than I deserve, Maggie. Are you still tied down to your man, or are you ready to run away with me?" Mark joked, trying to lighten the mood. "What, and ruin your charming bride's important day this Saturday?" Maggie shot back with a grin, pouring him a beer. As Mark took a seat at the bar, he noticed an attractive woman sitting alone 3 stools away. She seemed around 35, with a slight grin playing on her lips, probably amused by the banter between him and Maggie. Deciding to be neighborly, Mark leaned over and greeted her. "Hello there," he said, offering a friendly smile. The woman looked up, her forehead wrinkling slightly as she studied him. "You don't look drunk," she said, a hint of suspicion in her voice. "This is the most interesting greeting I've ever received," Mark replied, raising an eyebrow. "Maggie said you were on edge. I assumed she thought you were drunk," the woman explained. Mark grinned. "That's her nickname for me. But no, I'm not drunk. I'm Mark, by the way. Nice to meet you, Mark. You can call me Jenna." "Sorry, sensitive subject," Jenna said, her mood improving slightly. "No problem. We all have our baggage," Mark replied, trying to be understanding. Maggie, who had been eavesdropping on their conversation, chimed in. "Mark here is one of the sweetest and most loyal men I know. He never cheats." Sadness flickered across Jenna's face, her lips trembling slightly. "I'm sorry. I've been cheated on too many times to count." Mark reached out a hand to comfort her. "No worries, Jenna. I'm here if you want to talk." Jenna nodded, her mood lifting a bit more. "Thanks, Mark. It's been a tough road, but I'm getting better." Maggie smiled at the two of them. "Mark, why don't you tell Jenna your story? It's fascinating." Mark hesitated, but seeing the encouragement in Maggie's eyes and the curiosity in Jenna's, he began. "Well, it all started back in high school." As Mark delved into the story of his first marriage with Natalie, Jenna listened intently, her eyes reflecting a mix of empathy and interest. Natalie had been his high school sweetheart, but their relationship was far from perfect. Despite the red flags, Mark had been blinded by love and lust, leading to a tumultuous marriage that ended in heartbreak. Natalie was far from pure when we met. I was just an 18-year-old virgin, naive and eager to experience love. But my friends warned me about her, saying she had a reputation for being with anyone who wore pants. Still, I couldn't resist her charm, Mark recounted, his voice tinged with regret. "Did you ever feel like you were making a mistake?" Jenna asked, her voice soft with understanding. "All the time," Mark admitted. "But I was young and foolish, driven by hormones and the thrill of the chase." We got married right after high school, but it didn't take long for things to fall apart. I found out she had been cheating on me with multiple guys, some of them even our mutual friends. Jenna's eyes widened in shock. "That's terrible. How did you cope with it?" "I didn't, at first. I was devastated, my self-confidence shattered. But then I realized that I deserved better. I filed for divorce and decided to move on with my life," Mark explained. As Mark finished the story of his first failed marriage, he noticed that Jenna seemed more at ease, her earlier sadness replaced by a sense of camaraderie. Maggie nodded approvingly, her eyes twinkling with pride. "You've come a long way, Mark. And you're stronger for it," Maggie said, patting his shoulder. "Thanks, Maggie. I couldn't have done it without friends like you," Mark replied, his heart warming at the thought. As the evening wore on, Mark continued to share his life story with Jenna, recounting the ups and downs of his subsequent marriages and the lessons he had learned along the way. Despite the pain and betrayal, Mark had never lost hope in finding true love. By the time Mark finished his story, Jenna was smiling. "You're an inspiration, Mark. Thank you for sharing your story with me." "No problem, Jenna. Remember, it's never too late to find true love. Just don't give up," Mark said, offering her a reassuring smile. As Jenna left the pub, Mark felt a sense of satisfaction. Sharing his story had not only helped her but also reminded him of his own resilience and strength. With renewed determination, he looked forward to the future, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Maggie, watching him from behind the bar, raised her glass. "Here's to new beginnings, Mark." Mark clinked his glass with hers. "To new beginnings, Maggie." The first part of Mark's story had been shared, but there was much more to tell. As he finished his drink, he couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this time things would be different. Mark Johnson's journey into adulthood had been a whirlwind of emotions and decisions that, in hindsight, he realized were often driven by youthful naivety. He met Natalie during his senior year of high school. She was the kind of girl that turned heads, beautiful, confident, and seemingly out of his league. Mark was an 18-year-old virgin, captivated by her allure. Natalie had a reputation, but Mark, like many young men, chose to ignore the warnings. His friends constantly told him to be cautious, that Natalie wasn't the type to settle down. But love, or what he thought was love, made him blind. They met through mutual friends at a party after one of Mark's football games. As the quarterback, Mark was popular, but he had always been more focused on his studies and sports than on dating. "Luke, when are you going to stop hanging out with the blimp and find a girl worthy of our quarterback?" One of his teammates, Chuck, taunted him in the locker room. "If you talk about Aubrey like that again, I'll slap you," Mark retorted. "She's not a blimp. She's just a little chubby, but I like her. And although we're not dating, she's my best friend." "Fine, but you need a real girl who turns you on. We have to pop your cherry," Chuck teased, laughing. "I don't need your help with sex." "Move away," Mark said, getting annoyed. Ted, another teammate, intervened to calm things down. "Hey, Mark, sorry about that. It's just that Harper was telling my girlfriend she really wanted to be with you." Mark rolled his eyes. "Harper may be gorgeous, but she hangs out with anyone who wears pants. That's not what I need. She's not really like that. She's cute and likes you. Come to my party tomorrow night. She'll be there." Just see if there's some chemistry between you two. What could it hurt? Ted suggested. The next night, Mark found himself at Ted's party. The moment he walked in, Harper made a beeline for him. She was stunning, her presence commanding the attention of everyone in the room. "Hey, Mark. Glad you could make it," she said, her smile lighting up her face. "Hi, Harper. You look great," Mark replied, feeling his heart race. "Thanks. Let's get a drink," she suggested, leading him to the kitchen. They spent the night talking, laughing, and eventually kissing. Harper was forward, something Mark wasn't used to but found exciting. By the end of the night, they were making out passionately in one of the bedrooms. Over the next few months, their relationship grew. Harper was fun, adventurous, and seemed genuinely interested in Mark. They spent their weekends together, going to movies, parties, and enjoying each other's company. But there was always an undercurrent of tension. Harper was popular and flirtatious, and Mark couldn't shake the feeling that he was just another notch on her belt. As graduation approached, Harper and Mark decided to take their relationship to the next level. They got engaged, much to the surprise of their friends and family. They planned a small wedding right after graduation, hoping that marriage would solidify their relationship. The wedding day was beautiful, a sunny June afternoon. Mark stood at the altar, nervous but hopeful. As Harper walked down the aisle, he couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. She was stunning in her white dress, a vision of beauty. They exchanged vows, and for a moment, Mark believed that everything would be okay. But the honeymoon period was short-lived. Harper's flirtatious nature didn't change after marriage. She continued to go out with friends, often leaving Mark at home. He tried to trust her, but the rumors began to circulate. Friends would tell him about seeing her with other men, but Mark chose to ignore them, clinging to the hope that she would change. One night, about 6 months into their marriage, Mark came home early from work, feeling ill. He walked into their apartment and heard voices coming from the bedroom. His heart sank as he approached the door, which was slightly ajar. Through the crack, he saw Harper in bed with another man. The shock was overwhelming. Mark felt like his world was crumbling. He quietly backed away, not wanting to confront them in that moment. Instead, he went to the living room, sat on the couch, and tried to process what he had just seen. The betrayal cut deep, and he realized that the rumors were true. Harper came out of the bedroom a few minutes later, surprised to see Mark. "Oh, Mark, I didn't know you were home," she stammered, trying to compose herself. Mark looked at her, his eyes filled with pain. "I came home early. I wasn't feeling well, but it seems you've been busy." "Mark, it's not what you think," Harper began, but Mark held up his hand. "Save it, Harper. I saw everything," he said, his voice cold and distant. The confrontation that followed was explosive. Harper tried to justify her actions, but Mark was beyond listening. He packed a bag and left, unable to stay in the apartment any longer. He went to a friend's house and spent the night drinking, trying to numb the pain. The next few days were a blur. Mark filed for divorce, and the proceedings were quick. Harper didn't contest, knowing she was in the wrong. Within a few months, their marriage was officially over. Mark was left to pick up the pieces of his shattered heart and life. Reflecting on his first marriage, Mark realized how naive he had been. He had ignored the red flags, blinded by love and lust. But the experience had also taught him a valuable lesson about trust and self-worth. He vowed never to let himself be deceived like that again. In the aftermath of the divorce, Mark leaned heavily on his friends, especially Hannah and Maggie. They were his rock, providing support and encouragement as he navigated the difficult process of healing. He threw himself into his work, trying to distract himself from the pain. One evening, a few months after the divorce was finalized, Mark found himself back at the pub. Maggie greeted him with her usual warmth, and he took a seat at the bar. "How are you holding up, Mark?" she asked, concern evident in her eyes. "Better, I think. It's been tough, but I'm getting through it," Mark replied, offering a weak smile. "You know you can always talk to me, right?" Maggie said, pouring him a beer. "I know, Maggie. Thank you," Mark said, grateful for her support. As the night wore on, Mark struck up a conversation with another patron at the bar. Her name was Rachel, and she was charming, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in him. They talked for hours, sharing stories and laughs. For the first time in a long while, Mark felt a spark of hope. Little did he know, his journey was far from over. Rachel would become a significant part of his life, bringing both joy and heartbreak. But for now, as he sat at the bar, enjoying the company and the conversation, Mark allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things were finally starting to look up. Mark and Rachel's relationship progressed quickly. They were both eager to move on from past hurts and build something new and exciting together. Rachel, with her striking beauty and vivacious personality, captivated Mark. They spent their days exploring Austin, enjoying the city's vibrant culture, and their nights talking about dreams and future plans. 6 months into their relationship, Mark proposed to Rachel. It was a spontaneous decision, made during a romantic weekend getaway to the Texas Hill Country. They were sitting by a campfire, the night sky ablaze with stars, when Mark took Rachel's hand and asked her to marry him. She said yes without hesitation, and they planned a small, intimate wedding for the following month. The wedding was a simple affair, held in a beautiful garden surrounded by close friends and family. Mark's heart swelled with happiness as he watched Rachel walk down the aisle. Her smile was radiant, and for the first time in a long while, Mark felt genuinely hopeful about the future. Their first year of marriage was blissful. They settled into a comfortable routine, balancing work and personal time. Rachel managed a small modeling agency, and Mark continued to grow his wealth management firm. They often traveled, exploring new places and creating unforgettable memories. Their chemistry was undeniable, and their connection seemed unbreakable. However, as time passed, cracks began to appear in their seemingly perfect relationship. Rachel's work often took her out of town, and Mark started to notice a change in her behavior. She became more secretive, often avoiding direct answers about her trips and the people she was with. Mark's old fears and insecurities resurfaced, but he tried to push them aside, convincing himself that he was being paranoid. One rainy evening, about 3 years into their marriage, Mark received a phone call from an unknown number. It was one of Rachel's colleagues, someone he had met briefly at one of her agency's events. "Mark, I don't know how to say this, but I think you need to know what's going on," the voice on the other end said, hesitating. "What do you mean? What's going on?" Mark asked, his heart racing. "It's Rachel. She's been seeing one of the models she manages. They've been having an affair for months," the colleague revealed. Mark felt like the ground had been pulled out from under him. He thanked the caller and hung up, his mind reeling. He didn't want to believe it, but deep down, he knew it was true. The signs had been there all along, and he had ignored them, just like he had with Natalie. That night, Mark confronted Rachel. She denied it at first, but as he pressed her, the truth came spilling out. She had been unfaithful, and the affair had started long before their wedding. The betrayal was a knife to Mark's heart, reopening old wounds that had barely begun to heal. The divorce process was messy and painful. Rachel tried to make amends, but Mark was beyond forgiveness. The trust was shattered, and there was no way to rebuild it. They went their separate ways, each carrying their own scars from the failed marriage. Mark threw himself into his work once again, using it as a distraction from the pain. He leaned on Hannah and Maggie for support, their unwavering friendship a beacon of light in the darkness. Despite everything, Mark refused to give up on the idea of finding true love. He believed that somewhere out there, the right person was waiting for him. As the months passed, Mark slowly began to heal. He focused on personal growth, taking up new hobbies and reconnecting with old friends. He even started attending therapy, determined to break the cycle of failed relationships and learn from his past mistakes. One evening, about a year after his divorce from Rachel, Mark found himself back at the pub. Maggie greeted him with her usual warmth, and he took a seat at the bar. "How are you doing, Mark?" she asked, her eyes filled with genuine concern. "I'm getting there, Maggie. It's been a rough road, but I think I'm finally starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel," Mark replied, offering a sincere smile. "You deserve happiness, Mark. Don't ever forget that," Maggie said, pouring him a drink. As he sipped his beer, Mark struck up a conversation with a woman sitting next to him. Her name was Julia, and she had an infectious laugh and a kind heart. They talked for hours, sharing stories and finding common ground. For the first time in a long while, Mark felt a genuine connection. Little did he know, Julia would become a significant part of his life, bringing both joy and new challenges. But for now, as they sat at the bar, enjoying each other's company, Mark allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things were finally starting to look up. Mark Johnson's relationship with Rachel began with a whirlwind romance. They met at a party thrown by one of Mark's old friends, celebrating a milestone in their life. Rachel was captivating from the moment she walked into the room, her presence commanding attention. She had a vivacious personality that drew Mark in, and they quickly hit it off. They spent hours talking that night, discovering a shared love for travel, food, and new experiences. Mark felt an instant connection, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Rachel was different. She was charming, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in him. Their conversations flowed effortlessly, and by the end of the night, Mark felt a sense of hope he hadn't felt since his first marriage ended. Their relationship progressed rapidly. They were both eager to move past their respective hurts and build something new together. Rachel, with her striking beauty and infectious laughter, captivated Mark. They spent their days exploring Austin's vibrant culture and their nights talking about dreams and future plans. 6 months into their relationship, during a spontaneous weekend getaway to the Texas Hill Country, Mark proposed. They were sitting by a campfire under a sky full of stars when he took her hand and asked her to marry him. Rachel's eyes lit up with joy, and she said yes without hesitation. They planned a small, intimate wedding for the following month. The wedding was held in a beautiful garden surrounded by close friends and family. Mark couldn't help but feel a swell of happiness as he watched Rachel walk down the aisle. Her smile was radiant, and for the first time in years, Mark felt hopeful about the future. Their first year of marriage was blissful. They settled into a comfortable routine, balancing work and personal time. Rachel managed a small modeling agency, and Mark continued to grow his wealth management firm. They often traveled, exploring new places and creating unforgettable memories. Their chemistry was undeniable, and their connection seemed unbreakable. However, as time passed, cracks began to appear in their seemingly perfect relationship. Rachel's work often took her out of town, and Mark started to notice a change in her behavior. She became more secretive, often avoiding direct answers about her trips and the people she was with. Mark's old fears and insecurities resurfaced, but he tried to push them aside, convincing himself that he was being paranoid. One rainy evening, about 3 years into their marriage, Mark received a phone call from an unknown number. It was one of Rachel's colleagues, someone he had met briefly at one of her agency's events. "Mark, I don't know how to say this, but I think you need to know what's going on," the voice on the other end said, hesitating. "What do you mean? What's going on?" Mark asked, his heart racing. "It's Rachel. She's been seeing one of the models she manages. They've been having an affair for months," the colleague revealed. Mark felt like the ground had been pulled out from under him. He thanked the caller and hung up, his mind reeling. He didn't want to believe it, but deep down, he knew it was true. The signs had been there all along, and he had ignored them, just like he had with Natalie. That night, Mark confronted Rachel. She denied it at first, but as he pressed her, the truth came spilling out. She had been unfaithful, and the affair had started long before their wedding. The betrayal was a knife to Mark's heart, reopening old wounds that had barely begun to heal. The divorce process was messy and painful. Rachel tried to make amends, but Mark was beyond forgiveness. The trust was shattered, and there was no way to rebuild it. They went their separate ways, each carrying their own scars from the failed marriage. Mark threw himself into his work once again, using it as a distraction from the pain. He leaned on Hannah and Maggie for support, their unwavering friendship a beacon of light in the darkness. Despite everything, Mark refused to give up on the idea of finding true love. He believed that somewhere out there, the right person was waiting for him. As the months passed, Mark slowly began to heal. He focused on personal growth, taking up new hobbies and reconnecting with old friends. He even started attending therapy, determined to break the cycle of failed relationships and learn from his past mistakes. One evening, about a year after his divorce from Rachel, Mark found himself back at the pub. Maggie greeted him with her usual warmth, and he took a seat at the bar. "How are you doing, Mark?" she asked, her eyes filled with genuine concern. "I'm getting there, Maggie. It's been a rough road, but I think I'm finally starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel," Mark replied, offering a sincere smile. "You deserve happiness, Mark. Don't ever forget that," Maggie said, pouring him a drink. As he sipped his beer, Mark struck up a conversation with a woman sitting next to him. Her name was Julia, and she had an infectious laugh and a kind heart. They talked for hours, sharing stories and finding common ground. For the first time in a long while, Mark felt a genuine connection. Little did he know, Julia would become a significant part of his life, bringing both joy and new challenges. But for now, as they sat at the bar, enjoying each other's company, Mark allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things were finally starting to look up. Mark and Julia's relationship blossomed quickly. Julia was a breath of fresh air, with a kind heart and a zest for life that was infectious. She worked as a fitness instructor, and her passion for health and wellness was evident in everything she did. Mark was captivated by her energy and positivity, and they soon became inseparable. They spent their weekends hiking, kayaking, and exploring the great outdoors. Julia introduced Mark to a more active lifestyle, and he found himself feeling healthier and more alive than he had in years. Their shared love for adventure brought them closer together, and it wasn't long before Mark knew he wanted to spend the rest of his life with her. One sunny afternoon, while on a hike in the hill country, Mark proposed to Julia. They were standing on a cliff overlooking a breathtaking vista, and Mark felt a surge of love and certainty. Julia's eyes sparkled with joy as she accepted his proposal, and they embraced, their future looking bright and promising. Their wedding was a joyous celebration, held at a rustic lodge surrounded by nature. Friends and family gathered to witness their union, and the atmosphere was filled with love and happiness. Mark couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude for having found Julia. She was everything he had ever wanted, and he was determined to make their marriage a success. Julia decided to open her own gym, and Mark supported her wholeheartedly. He helped her with the initial setup, using his business acumen to ensure everything was in order. The gym quickly became a success, thanks to Julia's dedication and hard work. Mark was proud of her and enjoyed seeing her thrive in her element. However, as with his previous marriages, trouble began to brew beneath the surface. Julia's work required her to travel frequently, attending fitness conferences and workshops. Mark noticed that she was becoming increasingly distant, often engrossed in her phone and avoiding meaningful conversations. He tried to push aside his suspicions, not wanting to repeat the mistakes of his past. One evening, while Julia was away on a business trip, Mark decided to check his fitness tracker app. They had both gotten Fitbits to track their workouts and keep each other motivated. As he scrolled through the app, he noticed something unusual. Julia's activity levels were off the charts, showing that she had been active late into the night. Mark's heart sank as he realized what this meant. He called Julia, hoping for an explanation, but she didn't answer. The next morning, he received a call from one of Julia's colleagues, confirming his worst fears. Julia had been seeing someone else, a fellow fitness instructor she had met at a conference. When Julia returned home, Mark confronted her with the evidence. She tried to deny it at first, but eventually, the truth came out. She had been unfaithful, and the betrayal was more than Mark could bear. The divorce that followed was painful, but Mark knew he couldn't stay in a relationship built on lies and deceit. Mark once again found himself leaning on Hannah and Maggie for support. They were his anchors, helping him navigate the stormy waters of yet another failed marriage. Despite the heartbreak, Mark refused to let bitterness consume him. He believed that there was still hope for finding true love. In the months that followed, Mark focused on rebuilding his life. He threw himself into his work, finding solace in the routine and the sense of accomplishment it brought. He also made time for self-care, continuing the healthy habits Julia had introduced him to. He went hiking, practiced yoga, and took up meditation, finding peace in the quiet moments. One evening, while sitting at the pub with Maggie, Mark reflected on his journey. "You know, Maggie, I've been through a lot, but I still believe there's someone out there for me. I just have to keep looking." Maggie smiled warmly. "You're right, Mark. You've got a good heart, and you deserve someone who sees that. Don't ever give up." As Mark took a sip of his drink, he felt a renewed sense of determination. He wasn't going to let his past define him. He was ready to move forward, ready to embrace whatever the future held. And with friends like Hannah and Maggie by his side, he knew he could face anything. After 3 failed marriages, Mark Johnson had learned a lot about himself and what he wanted in a partner. He realized that he had often been blinded by physical attraction and the excitement of new relationships, neglecting the deeper connections that were essential for a lasting bond. Reflecting on his past, he understood that true love required more than just chemistry. It needed trust, respect, and shared values. Emma, Mark's high school friend and longtime confidant, had always been there for him. She was married to his best friend Greg, and their relationship had always been one of mutual respect and support. When Greg was diagnosed with cancer, Mark had been there for both of them, offering whatever help he could. Greg's passing was a devastating blow, leaving Emma and their children heartbroken. Mark continued to support them, visiting frequently and helping with anything they needed. Over time, his feelings for Emma began to deepen. He realized that she was the person he had been searching for all along. One evening, after spending the day with Emma and the kids, Mark found himself alone with her on the porch. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the yard. They sat in comfortable silence, the bond between them stronger than ever. "Emma, there's something I need to tell you," Mark began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Emma turned to him, her eyes filled with understanding. "What is it, Mark? I've been thinking a lot about us, about everything we've been through. I know it might seem sudden, but I've realized that I love you, Emma. I always have, and I think I always will," Mark confessed, his heart pounding in his chest. Emma's eyes widened in surprise, but then a soft smile spread across her face. "Mark, I've loved you for a long time too. I didn't want to admit it, especially after losing Greg, but you've always been there for me. You've always been my rock." Mark reached out and took her hand. "I know we've both been through a lot, but I think we could build something beautiful together. I want to be there for you and the kids, to be a part of your lives in every way possible." Tears welled up in Emma's eyes as she squeezed his hand. "I'd like that too, Mark. I've always wanted to be with you, but I was afraid of losing our friendship. But now, I realize that we can have both." They embraced, their hearts full of hope and love. Mark felt a sense of peace and happiness he hadn't experienced in a long time. He knew that this was the beginning of something wonderful. Over the next few months, Mark and Emma's relationship blossomed. They took things slowly, ensuring that the children were comfortable with the new dynamic. Mark spent more time with Emma and the kids, becoming a father figure and a source of stability. Their love grew stronger with each passing day. Mark appreciated Emma's kindness, her resilience, and her unwavering support. Emma admired Mark's strength, his dedication, and his ability to love deeply despite the hardships he had faced. On a sunny spring afternoon, surrounded by friends and family, Mark and Emma exchanged vows in a heartfelt ceremony. The children played a significant role in the wedding, symbolizing the blending of their families and the start of a new chapter. Mark couldn't believe his luck. He had finally found the love he had been searching for, and it was with someone who had always been there, waiting for the right moment. Their life together was filled with joy, laughter, and the occasional challenge, but they faced everything as a team. Mark continued to cherish his friendships with Hannah and Maggie, grateful for their unwavering support. They celebrated his newfound happiness, knowing that he had finally found the person who truly understood and loved him. Mark Johnson's journey had been filled with ups and downs, heartbreaks and triumphs. Through it all, he had learned valuable lessons about love, trust, and resilience. His story was a testament to the power of perseverance and the importance of never giving up on finding true happiness. As he sat on the porch of their home, watching Emma and the kids play in the yard, Mark felt a profound sense of contentment. He had finally found his place in the world, surrounded by the people he loved most. His heart was full, and he knew that he was exactly where he was meant to be. Reflecting on his journey, Mark realized that each failed relationship had taught him something important. He had learned to value himself, to trust his instincts, and to seek out partners who shared his values and dreams. He understood that true love required effort, patience, and a willingness to grow together. Mark's story was one of hope and resilience. It showed that no matter how many times you fall, it's always possible to get back up and find happiness. He had faced heartbreak and betrayal, but he had never lost sight of his goal, to find a love that was true and enduring. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over their home, Mark took Emma's hand and smiled. They had built a beautiful life together, one filled with love, laughter, and the promise of a bright future. And for Mark, that was more than enough. Thanks for joining us on this emotional journey through Mark Johnson's life. His story reminds us that even after the deepest betrayals, hope and true love can still be found. Mark's resilience and unwavering belief in finding happiness led him to the love he deserved, proving that it's never too late to rewrite your own story. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring tales. Until next time, keep believing in love and never give up on your dreams. Take care, and see you in the next video.